Hello, welcome to another episode of CyberDudes podcast. I am still your host, Robin Thornton, joined by Omar Sangarima as ever. How are you, Omar?
Better now, man. I missed it.
I know, we've had a couple of weeks off. Yes,
Well, off.
family off, yeah.
Yeah, bro.
Family things.
Yeah.
But hey, no, we're back and we are going to jump pretty much straight into the story of the week, the scandal of the week. Before we do that, though, I'm first going to just say anybody who has used 23andMe in the last, since it's been around, it is no longer around. They have gone bankrupt and they've got an awful lot of data on everybody who's used their services, because unless you have been living under a rock and do not know what 23andMe is, it's family genealogy and ancestry stuff. So you send in your DNA and they analyze it and they tell you where you came from way back when. Now the problem is, having had them gone bankrupt, those assets will then end up belonging to whoever is afforded them or decides to buy them up. And as we all know, or we all should know, data is an asset. So you have absolutely no idea who that data could end up being sold on to. And it's your data. It's you. It's the most quintessential of your data. So by all means, go to 23andMe's website that I imagine is still just about running. Email them, request that they delete all your DNA data or all your genetic data, because otherwise you have absolutely no idea who that is going to end up in the hands of. Have you ever used it, Emma?
Yeah, this is a sore subject at the Sangarima house. Because it was given as a gift for like a Christmas, and so I was kind of like forced into. And yeah, and I was just like, this is gonna be terrible. This is gonna end up poorly. Either they're gonna actively sell the stuff themselves in order to turn a quick buck, or this will happen, which is unless they're profitable. So it's you were either gonna end up banged either way. If it was profitable, it was gonna probably be off the back of them brokering the data themselves. If the venture was not profitable, your data was gonna end up with whatever bargain bin nefarious shadow broker type dealer is in the market to snap up this type of data. And let me say this, I feel very confident, unequivocally, anyone who would be in the market to buy this is probably an entity that you don't want having this data. So I'm just gonna put that out there, and it's
data
really,
brokers and the hackers.
yeah, there's who else, right? Like, I don't wake up and go, you know what would help my app development would be genealogy data. Unless you can show me that you're a .edu that just wants to make like augmented reality projects for those kids. Remember, you had to do your family tree in like third grade. Unless you can tell me that that's specifically what you're doing, and you're making like cartoons of their ancestors to really engage them. Outside of that use case, the people that are going to be in the market for this shit are the people you don't want having it to begin with. End rant.
Absolutely. So hop on to 23andme.com if you were a customer or former customer. Go to the privacy tab at the top and you will get reams of data on what they do and don't do with your data. Right at the bottom, you can find a contact us, which is privacy@23andme.com, and request that they get rid of that information so it doesn't get sold on to anybody else. Okay. Shall we step into our main thing for the week?
Oh boy. Sure.
Major Hexeth and his band of merry men.
Don't call them clowns, though.
Don't call them clowns. God, no, can't call them clowns. People might get really rumbled. So if you've been living under another rock and have not been paying attention to anything, top administration officials, US government administration officials, sharing classified information There's the argument from one side, classified information, the argument from the other going, oh, no, it's not. There were no war plans. Apparently, yes, there were. Well, actually, not even apparently, yes, there were. The Atlantic released the receipts. But yeah.
That right there just makes me chuckle. At like, you know, the classic don't get into an argument with folks that buy ink by the barrel. Like, don't go liar, liar, pants on fire to people whose like complete jobs, right? If they're somewhat have
it's to call
integrity,
bullshit.
it's to call they're professional BS callers. I'm sorry. That was the first thing, right? Like land war in Asia, right?
Mhm.
One of the classic blunders. We can add this to that list of don't do exactly what was done here. Please continue, sir. Sorry.
Don't fight a war on two fronts. Don't go occupying France whilst also trying to fight the Soviets. Yes.
Yeah.
No. So as it's been termed, Signalgate, we have senior US government officials sharing classified information over a Signal chat, which accidentally included editor-in-chief of the Atlantic. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that's not in the onboarding manual saying go adding journalists into your high-level government communications chats.
Well, in his defense, in his defense, and it just came to me, so I don't know if it's as funny as I think it is, but we're gonna try it out. In his defense, considering like what his contacts would be full with, right? His previous career, you know, maybe he meant another person by the same name, right? You know how it can auto complete, and you're like,
yeah.
right? So considering that, you know, he has absolutely probably one of the weakest resumes to have the job he has, we'll put that aside. But his previous life was in the media, right?
Yeah.
So like, I bet if I got, you know, some pretty government clearance job and there was like a Robin, you know, in the NSA or something, you know, I'd probably have to make a mental note and be like, not Thornton. Right? Just don't add him. You know what I mean?
So, well, okay. So here's where that bit apparently is not Hicks' fault, because it was National Security Advisor Mike Waltz who set up the chat. This chat was to discuss military maneuvers against Houthi rebels in Yemen, presumably under the guise of weakening them so that they don't try and
serve the Pax Romana that we're trying to set up over there.
Well, so that they have fewer resources with which to attack cargo freighters in the shipping lanes going towards the Suez Canal.
Prices are going down, bro. Just watch.
Yeah, but getting the digs in there.
Yep.
But Mike Waltz has set up this chat now, presumably, and I can kind of believe that this was the case. A Signal chat set up for the express purpose of saying, who do we get into a chat on the actual government systems? Because in December 2024, the Biden administration did say, yep, Signal's okay to use for unclassified public or recall data containing conversations. The Pentagon only a few weeks ago, actually, just before this broke, actually did say specifically third-party messaging apps, e.g. Signal, are permitted by policy for unclassified accountability recall exercises, but are not approved to process or store non-public unclassified information. So even if it's not classified, if it's non-public, as in we are sending F-18s into
airspace,
into Yemeni airspace, that should not be on there. Now, apparently, the purpose of the group originally was, as I said, to work out who should be on the chat on the actual communication system, which I'm going to assume should have probably been the Joint Worldwide Intelligence Communication System, which is the US government's, the Department of Defense's secure intranet system that is intended to house these kinds of conversations. But instead, Pete Hegg says, because we had in there National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, Vice President J.D. Vance, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, another person who has never actually held an intelligence job in her life, woefully underqualified, along with a several others. Pete Hegg starts going, oh, this is happening, F-18's going here, missiles of certain designations being fired here, here, and here, and all that, and then the infamous fist bump America flag flame emoji thing from Mike Waltz, etc., etc., etc. All the while, Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, is looking at this, being like, Big Bird walking along with the Imperial officers and Darth Vader, going, "What am I doing here? Why am I in this?"
It's so bad, and even I'll say this, right? I'll throw a head fake here, because I'm throwing digs, so I'll try to walk some of it back slightly. Where yes, you can have situations where somebody who doesn't, who's not a dyed in the wool intelligence person might bring some awesome perspectives to, a apparatus that almost by its very nature you can't trust, right? They're in the lies and secrets business. So I can see where you want to go, hey, let's get some oversight, let's get a fresh set of eyes. Cool, awesome.
Mhm.
However, there's a way to handle a fuck up like this that involves just, gonna kick it to my boy Jocko. Just extreme ownership. Yeah, we messed up. Sorry. Won't happen again. I could even see some of the apologists, even it would resonate with me slightly, where you go, hey, we're just trying, we're slanging and banging, we're moving at the speed of business here, all the cliches, and we're just trying to get things done. No harm came of it, thank goodness, right? We didn't put any people at risk, which is one of the things that they could. Well, they did put people at risk, but nothing happened of it. So it's like, well, sorry, but it didn't, But
But a
goodness
journalist had the
gracious,
good sense to exercise discretion here and
yes,
actually do. The problem is if this is not a journalist, if this is somebody else who's been accidentally added
sure,
to the chat who doesn't have that degree of just sensible on his shoulders, and here's where we can start getting into was Signal the right thing to use or not? Absolutely not. We've already covered the note released by the Pentagon as to say yes, this, not that. Specifically as well, the Pentagon being the building that Pete Hegseth is responsible for, so it's his own people have said you shouldn't be using this. And to your point, I can understand that motivation around. It's kind of like a bit of a Zuckerberg move, fast and break things sort of thing. It's like
sure,
be productive. Don't be allowed to be hamstrung by or
red
hamstring
tape.
productivity by as a result of red tape and arbitrary guardrails. But these guardrails are not arbitrary. This is security. So there's a few reasons that Signal is absolutely not appropriate for this sort of stuff. One, open source public infrastructure, right? Anybody can get to this. This is not a closed off ring fenced system. Now,
No,
it's not to say that it's gonna get hacked. The Russians have been trying, but their servers don't store the conversations. They store things like logs about who logged on when, what phone numbers there are. The phone numbers itself is a dangerous enough thing as it is, however,
yeah, which is
as we've
why,
seen with Salt
yeah,
Typhoon and the telecoms providers.
yep, and that's why that's one of those things where Signals even tried to move towards a that's an upgrade and an update that they've I think started rolling out or have rolled out, right? Because for a long time you couldn't get an account without tying it to a number, and privacy
Mhm.
advocates were like, Signal, you're doing 98% of the things right. This is that 2%. Please help us out, because there's a wide variety of use cases where you would want to have that happen, right? Especially when you
Mhm.
want to have that as much of that full cloak as you can. I think one of the telling things too, Robin, right? Let's not only right was homie's team saying this is not the way, we shouldn't use this. The head of Signal was going, listen, there's use cases where you use this is not one of them. We're pretty safe for almost every other situation that but not right for,
No,
because this is the whole ballgame. This is next level security that you need for this stuff.
yeah, well, and that's the thing. Signal is consumer grade product. It is not. It is, and yes, okay. People arguing in defense of these individuals who did stupid things are saying, oh, well, it's encrypted. It's got 256-bit encryptions. But yes, fine. However, there's not all the additional guardrails that the US government is going to have. over something like the JWICS.
Yeah.
So that in of itself, and let's sort of dig into the consumer product piece. There's no enterprise version of this. There's no Signal for Business as it exists right now. So you've got a complete dearth of enterprise level identity and access management, centralized identity and access management dashboards to make sure that only the appropriate people can be added to chats, which is exactly what has happened here. You only need somebody's phone number to be able to add them to a chat, and it can be any Signal user. It's not from a defined pool of, yes, these are all government employees, and if you accidentally add somebody, or if we in the central sort of administration of the tool see somebody who definitely doesn't fit the profile of somebody who should be there, we can either flag an alert to the chat admin or boot the person off the chat completely. Like, none of that exists. There is no oversight from any central entity. And I think this is kind of partly I wouldn't be surprised if this is partly the aim of the individuals involved. Let's go and look back to the Bush-Cheney administration, where all of their email communications were backed up to a private server at the RNC. This is before the Hillary
private server. Did you say private server?
I said private server. I said private server. So all of that stuff, all of the stuff that went on in terms of enhanced interrogation techniques and Guantanamo and Camp X-ray, et cetera, all of that information was lost because because all of that was lost because the RNC has it. There's no firm government entity that actually have that. And there's exactly the same sort of problem here, where none of this is on government-owned, managed infrastructure. It's on open source stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's not to mention as well, so individual users can, much like on WhatsApp or other chat apps, they can be the ones who designate what their account shows as. Right. So you've got somebody under the designation VP there, and I think it's definitely somewhat outlandish, but you've got people jokingly kind of jokingly theorizing, like, just tell me VP doesn't mean Vladimir Putin, right, for example. But if you can say, like, so, and that's one of those clear sort of situations. It's like, how do we even know that the right people are on the chat? Not to mention, this whole thing, there was like 19, 20 people in this chat. This whole thing went down with all of these messages going backwards and forwards. Granted, we said, yeah, nobody actually got put in harm's way because it was all a matter of, all of this broke long after the stuff the strikes had happened, etc. But that's not to say that if somebody of malicious intent had been there. But nobody even noticed that Goldberg was on this chat. They didn't notice that there was somebody, it's like a friggin' game of Among Us where it's like, who's the imposter? Don't know. Never even bothered trying to figure it
out. I just think that, shout out to all the unsung heroes in data governance and data classification handling, right, across enterprises. Your moment to shine, right, is now. Your big brothers in cybersecurity have been taking all the spotlight, but now here it is, because as you pointed out, right, it's not pedantic at all. There's levels and layers of the onion of what you can do with certain types of information that your entity or your organization has determined is important, right? We're trying to bring it back to the small medium business, right? So there's regulations that you're going to face that are going to tell you, hey, this is important. You're going to have to maintain it at this level. There's common sense that's going to come in. There's business practice that's going to show you. Retention, right, is another issue. As you pointed out, you can weaponize retention. So you sure as shit want to get it right according to whatever laws are governing the interaction. But I just think there's a reason why there's an entire other infrastructure for highly sensitive. Well, for business for sure, right? And I just chuckled at Signal for Business because I think you just launched like their next their thing that's going to make them super profitable and be able to continue to then have the philanthropic arm of saving journalists, right, in war-torn countries, which is it's absolutely a thing that Signal does. And shout out to Signal. They've been flying this flag for a while, and you can tell by the usage rates, right? There's always a spike when when something like this is in the news and
Something
people go
sketch goes
Signal,
along, yeah.
right? Exactly. And also their transparency, not trying to even head nod towards, well, you could use it. No, flat out saying this is not what it's for. You guys are bonkers. You're being clowns. Stop it. But there's the entire reason why there's an actual separate infrastructure where you transmit these messages. There's protocols involved with you're going to have this sort of conversation. You need to go into this special room that's essentially air gapped from everything else. You need to leave all your devices out the door, or else they're going to fry when they walk in. And then there you are. It's done on purpose. There's certain things that you can play around with, and there's certain things where where you can go move fast and break things. Cool, awesome. There's other things that you cannot. I mentioned at the top of the rant here where it goes, there were people put into harm's way. Thankfully, as you said, the missing, the odd person out wasn't someone to go tweeting it, wasn't
Mhm.
someone to go, hey, let me, or let's get super serious. Wasn't acting for a foreign power where
Exactly.
you could make some money or you could gain some influence or you could do a little horse trading by tipping somebody off. What happens if then, those pilots are met with far stiffer resistance than they should have been when they're doing these runs? Thankfully, it didn't happen. However, this is not the precedent that I want to see. Right? You take this in combination with let's relax on what we're doing to spy on Russia. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's take a different sort of stance on a couple things here. I'm not seeing and getting warm and fuzzies from just flat out. I need serious people to be in charge of this stuff. I don't need to agree with their politics all the time. I really don't.
Mhm.
Right? I think part of the beauty of this country is that you can have folks that are opposite odd ends of the spectrum, but you get them all in a room and saying, we're going to try to save American lives, or we're going to try to protect American interests, or we're going to try to do X, Y, Z. Right? At the moment, time of execution, I just want serious folks in charge of this stuff.
Mm.
Right? We talk politics when we get out of the air gap rooms, right? Where we're sending
Yeah.
secrets. But this is just it's so bonkers to me. And honestly, for me, it's a litmus test when folks try to downplay it, then you're not a serious person.
No.
Like then
No.
then I don't even want to engage in political conversations with you because you're a moron. I'm sorry, but you are. Like there's no for me, this is the sort of stuff it overlaps with what we do enough, Robin, where
Mm.
I go, okay, no, this is an IQ test. If you don't see that this was terrible, I'm not saying it was the absolute end of the world, right? I'm not overblowing it,
It
but
was,
like the
it
fact
wasn't the
that
worst thing that has ever happened, but it
don't
was
downplay it
pretty
though.
like it was dumb and it was
Yeah,
careless and it was
yes,
irresponsible. And
absolutely.
this is it. And you say because we keep because this is the problem. But, we've got a politically charged environment here, and I'll be the first person to say that I am not a fan of the individuals involved in that chat, not least because what they did was a dumb thing and it was irresponsible, and it does show that it does indicate that they're unserious people, given the fact that they are unwilling to own up to the mistake and take accountability for it. But the other side of it is, if it were people that I was somewhat more favorable to, I would still be saying, this is fucking dumb. So
Yeah, straight
stupid.
up.
Don't do
I
it. I mean,
I'd be you would hear like when I see these things happen in the news, like it just automatically I hear a rim shot, right? Like, oh, we like that was just an easy mistake to not make,
mm,
right? The work is hard enough. Folks are actively, hoping for our demise as a nation, as a people, as a whatever. Let's not give it to them this easy. Let's do the unforced errors, right? Why
mm,
why are we scoring own goals on ourselves here, Robin? When the other side is a hot 11, right? They're tough enough. Let's not do it to ourselves. And when it happens and you don't own up to it, you start losing even a modicum of that initial respect I had for you. Going, listen, I might not have voted for you, I might not rock with you in every other situation, but I'm not actively hoping that you fuck up, because if you do, then it's America fucking up. I don't want that, right? Don't do this stuff, right? But then
mm.
if you don't own up to it, man, I lose my patience really quickly on this, right? And this is one of those things, like I said, it overlaps with what we do enough where, there's other policy and there's other aspects of things where I can go, maybe I don't know enough. Maybe I don't know. I know just enough about this stuff, and I say just enough. Now, I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I know just enough that this was stupid. You own up to it. You go, oh, that was me. I'm sorry, never again. You thank the guy for
Mm.
not, he's in the business of calling bullshit, and he's also in the business of getting there first. You know how ethically up upstanding he had to have been to not the first thing to go is, go to the National Enquirer and be like, hey, I'm on a Signal chat, right? Like, come on, bro. You like in this day and age of citizen reporting and everybody trying to scoop everything else and making shit up in order to do so, he had a legitimate, like, wild thing on his plate, and he's like, wait a second. This is dangerous. This is not cool. He had that integrity, both professionally and personally, and
Yeah.
and we're trying to vilify him. You call him a sleazebag. That's the first thing his president says to him. Again, I find it very difficult to excise the politics out of here, but at the core, I want to know that intense, serious folks are running this shit for us.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I think it's a shame that it's difficult to excise the politics out of it, because at the end of the day, security is the sort of thing that should be apolitical. It's either
Yes,
secure or it's
absolutely.
not. It's either usable or it's not. Like, I don't
Yep.
think politics really has anything to do with it or should have anything to do with it. Now,
Agreed.
there's another way that this could have been played as well, from the angle of and it speaks to having, you've got to take the accountability for it first, but you can come back, you can follow up with, but the reason that we did this was, and we spoke about this before, the reason that we did this was because it was expeditious to do it this way, because, hey, look, you know what? The JWICS, it's a fucking pain to use, right? You could have actually put in an argument there as to say, yes, the government stuff is really, really secure, but it is not usable, and we have to make more of a progression towards more usable security.
Innovate.
The problem with what they did here, innovation.
Yes.
The problem with and I mean, they've got fucking Doge, for crying out loud. You say, like, that's exactly the sort of like area where you go, oh well, look, JWICS is a clunky piece of garbage and it's inefficient. Hey, why don't we do some efficiency on it, right? Why don't we go and chainsaw some efficiency into it?
Yeah.
Without compromising the actual security of it. But no, instead we got a little bit too happy and started shouting our mouth off over Signal with a journalist in the chat. And here's the other thing as well, I didn't mention about, from the enterprise level security aspect to it. What if one of those, I mean, these messages do disappear after a while, right? You can turn that functionality on, but there's a time period there where those messages are going to be there. What if somebody loses the device? What if they get it stolen? What if somebody shoulder surfs them and sees their password? Because I can guarantee you, not all of these numbers, well, certainly not all of these numbers, because one of them wasn't even a government device, Goldberg's. Not all of these numbers will have been government devices. These will have been personal cell phones, personal mobile phones. Now, what happens if you lose it? Have you got the setup on a mobile device management application in order to wipe those devices remotely? No, they're personal devices. I don't even think that they. I doubt that they do have that MDM on there. Yeah. And even then, and even if there was the MDM on it, it's completely frigging useless, because there's no as we discussed, there's no centralized enterprise security. Who is there actually available to use the non-existent functionality to wipe the
nuke it,
the data from the device that's been lost or stolen?
And the classical,
it's massive failing of operational security from people who do allegedly intelligence and national security and defense. And you had one job to do.
No, but and also what gets me, right, because we hear in our business, Robin, the classical defense of, well, I'm not a target, I'm not that important, is completely out the window in this.
Because these people are targets.
Of 100%. So all the
they're
things,
the most targety of targets.
All the things that you just mentioned, right? Shoulder surfing, loss or theft, right? It completely gets ratcheted up in the threat model, because you are, as you said, the absolute golden geese when it comes to targets for this area of operations. Because wouldn't you just go, hey, we know security breaches happen as a result of you're basically the least secured thing on the block that has X amount of value. This is that perfect, weird in-between space, as you mentioned, that it has access to now, we know, right? Oh, check out Signal on all these personal devices. No enterprise level security. This is the perfect wedge, right? A piece of that cheese hunk that has juicy potential payoffs, and not a lot of security to get around. This is brilliant in a nefarious way. So yeah,
I think what part of what has happened with this as well is there's an aspect of there's an illusion of security that the fact that it's an encrypted app with disappearing messages that exists, and not that that's not secure. As I said, it's 256-bit encryption. There's a bunch of stuff you can go read up on the Curve 25519 encryption algorithm that it uses if you would like to. It's pretty damn robust, but the level of security that needs to exist with this, all of the rhetoric around Signal's security creates an illusion that it is to that, that it cuts that mustard, and it just doesn't. If you don't know the intricacies and the nuances of why this is so much more secure than this, then they look the same.
Sure. You can be
so
you can be, and again, I'll harp on this, right? You can be forgiven for that if you're not playing in this type of sandbox. But you are, so you're at a different level in my mind of culpability. And if not, then you should have an advisor. You should have a tech person with the IT tan in the corner of the room, or just humble tech support. See, that's another day. But someone should be telling you, hey, this isn't that, right? And again, for all of our listeners who aren't, well, Signal's still good for me. More than likely, yes. For your use cases, for what you're up to, it's it's far better than Telegram. I'll say that. But there's that's fine. But as you said, it's for these types of situations, you have to do military grade, enterprise grade has to mean something, and it does in this case, because it's a far more distant shore than even the albeit pretty good security that Signal does offer. It's still my go-to when say, hey, listen, you have to send something that you don't want too many folks to be able to take a look at. There it is. And and also the commitment of that organization's long-standing history of making the right choices when potentially the right choices were hard to make to preserve history and privacy, or security and privacy over their history. They've been nothing short of astounding and phenomenal, right? They've stood up when it's not easy to stand up. However, they themselves are saying that they don't use our shit for this. Period.
Yep.
Because they're responsible people and they're trying to help us out. Like, oh god.
And that's it. Here we go. So as far as Signalgate goes, you got three things. Security is not a matter of politics. It's a dumb fucking thing to do, no matter what your political beliefs are for. Don't do it when Signal themselves says this is not the right thing to use, and then when your own people at the Pentagon are also telling you this is not the right thing to use, don't use the fucking thing. That is our show for today. I don't even know how to round that off.
Listen, it's been this weight on my chest, right? Ever since it happened, I was like, I gotta get on a call with Robert.
And that's the other thing. I feel like we're by nature of our recording cycle and the fact that we had a week off, we're sort of somewhat behind the curve with it. But I did really want to dig into here's what the actual security says from security people. I know I've seen a handful of people, a very, very small handful of people, defending the whole thing or saying it's all blown out of proportion. It's a really good litmus test for, as you said earlier, like who is not serious people. And I've seen them called out as saying, if you do think that this is all overblown, you are not a serious security professional, because every single security professional with a modicum of sense is going, yeah, again, it doesn't matter who the hell did this. This was dumb as shit.
Yeah.
With that bombshell, we will see you again next week. In the meantime, please do stay cyber safe and don't be having any military chats over stuff that's not military grade. Bye-bye.
Adios.